Miami podcast. Today we have an amazing guest joining us. He's a businessman, attorney, former Hialeah councilman, and former actor. Let's welcome my dear friend, Oscar de la Rosa. Thank you for joining us, Oscar.
I love that. That was an amazing introduction. I couldn't have paid you to do a better introduction than that. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
I had to serve you right.
Thank you so much.
But I'm super happy to have you here, Oscar. And I want to talk a little bit about you and how you got to where you are today. I always say it with my guests, but it's because I bring on great people, right? You guys are so interesting. There's so much more to you than I think people realize. How do we get from superstar boxer Max Rossi to Hialeah councilman to being a multi-state bar attorney?
Wow. I have to give you credit. Not many people in South Florida know about that past. The ones that do, I consider them the real ones. I'm very impressed that you said that. So that's a great opening. And thank you so much, obviously, for those kind words. I don't think of myself that highly, but I'm glad that at least that information out there is a profile, so I appreciate that. But look, I don't think I've gotten to where I want to get to in life yet, right? I think that, I always say Matthew McConaughey said it in his Oscar speech, the person I look up to most is me in 5 years, and me in 10 years, and me in 15 years. And I think that's a good, viewpoint to have in life, because you always want to be bettering. You always want to try and be the best version of yourself. And it's an interesting path that I've taken to get to where I currently am. When I was in high school, I had a friend of mine, Marco Nunez, and this is a shout out to my buddy Marco Nunez. We went to Columbus together, and then when I went to FIU, he was doing commercials. So I kept seeing him. Like, I saw him on a Baptist commercial. I saw him on a commercial for like Home Depot. And I said, man, how are you doing this? And he goes, man, I got an agent in South Florida. I started working. I took headshots, and I've been booking roles. It's like, I know, how much do you make for this? He's like, I got paid $1,000 the other day for a commercial. I said, what? I was 18 years old. $1,000 to me was like, he basically said he was a millionaire at that point. And I would have really so $1,000 was a big deal. And I said, man, how do I get involved in this? And he introduced me. I started learning, and really I got into the whole film industry early on when I was 19 years old, because I just wanted to start doing commercials to make some extra money while I was in college. That was really the mindset. And I've always learned, and I learned this from my mother. And for those of you that don't know my mother, she came from Cuba at a very young age. She had me when she was 19 years old. The tenacity and the work ethic that my mother has, I've never seen in somebody else. I mean, for where she came to this country to where she is today, she came here not even speaking English, and she just taught me at a very young age, you don't make excuses, you show up every single day, and you just work, and you just do what you need to do. So I always took that, but I always wanted to take an entrepreneurial route. I was afraid of all the stories my grandparents would tell me about communism and Cuba. I was afraid, obviously, of growing up in a community where they would constantly remind you that everything was taken away from them. And I said, I want to make sure I create a legacy, and I want to make sure I create a path for myself where nobody can take anything away from me. And that mindset and that mentality is what drove me to get into the film industry, which is the same work ethic. When I was in the industry, I realized it's an industry where everybody tells you, just sit around and wait your turn, right? Go to castings, go to auditions, and maybe we like you, maybe we don't like you. Right? So you would do 100 auditions, and hopefully you would get one role, maybe. And there's a lot of rejection. I said, what can I do that's in my control? What can I do to protect, my future in this decision I decided to make? So I ended up writing my own screenplay. A really good friend of mine, Orlando Cecilia, and I partnered, and we produced the movie. I starred in it. He directed it. He produced it. Actually, we had a gentleman named Fro Rojas, which is amazing, directed, and Landy produced it with me. And we took it to film festivals, and we won 4 film festivals nationwide. Best film, best screenplay. And I said, oh my goodness. If you take something into your own control, you can create your future. You can control your destiny. And that was kind of the mindset that I took. If I'm going to do the film, I want to write it. I want to produce it. I want to be involved in it as much as I possibly can. And in that path, I realized, you need money to make movies, okay? People are not just gonna write you checks. So the mentality was, okay, well, go back to law school. I'll get a degree, because my mom always wanted me to have a degree. I went and became a lawyer. I didn't want to be a lawyer in law school. So every single day that I was in law school, I kept asking myself, why am I doing this? Why am I in law school? I hate it. And honestly, it was the best decision that I made. From that point till today, kind of the same mindset. You approach every single day as a new day. You work hard, and opportunities will start to arise, and that's how I've gotten to where I am today.
Do you feel like the role you took on in Lionheart at the time was in many ways emblematic of who you were then and who you'd become now?
That's deep. I would say that when we wrote that screenplay, we were mimicking life in general. The gentleman that I had as my trainer, Mauri Ramos, is another individual, fled Cuba, fled communism, was here by himself, and he created a gym and he created a business from just working hard. And I remember he would always tell me, everybody has their own fight. Doesn't matter who you meet in life, every single individual is going through their own battle. You might not know about that battle, they might not talk about that battle, but every single individual that you meet is going through a fight within themselves at that moment. And it never goes away. And you have to learn how to just deal with those fights. So the screenplay really mimicked a person that in life, you're going to get presented opportunities and you're going to get presented different options. How are you going to deal with those opportunities, and why are you going to make those decisions, knowing that for the rest of your life, you're going to have to accept the outcome of whatever decision you took. So that was really the screenplay and the thought process behind creating that character. And I think that does mimic not just myself, I think it mimics everybody in life. You have to live with the decisions that you make and understand that when you made those decisions at the time, you made them for a reason.
100%. And I think that that strength and that story is unparalleled, right? And I see it in so many people that are like us, that are Cuban Americans, that they have family like that. And in that same way, you've used that strength and you've given back to the community, and you have a huge heart for that hard work for people. And it shows in what you do now, right? Because you take on these immigration cases and you help people go through this very difficult process. You help people with their personal injury cases when they can't get their just recompense. And it goes back to even way before you were an attorney or a councilman. I mean, you even used to host an annual toy drive with your own organization, the Little Steps Foundation. So, you know, I'd love to talk about a little bit more why you got into giving back to the community in that way, how that all came about, why you decided to do that.
You bring a lot of throwbacks, and I'm really proud, obviously, of the research you've done. This is why you're going to be an amazing attorney, because you do your homework, you know. And I want to, before I answer that question, I want to tell you, and I want everybody to know out there, this is the camera, right? I'm assuming this is my camera.
Yeah, that's your camera.
Josie's one of the most incredible people I've ever met in South Florida. Hands down. This is a future congresswoman, a future senator. This is maybe the first woman president of the United States. The work ethic that you have, the research, the heart that you have, the compassion, you are an incredible person. I'm so glad that I'm even around the vicinity of being able to around you, because I know you're going to be a superstar.
Thank you.
Saying that, that's not to butter you up. That's because it's the truth. That's a great question, again. And look, I don't want to seem that I have it all figured out, because I really don't. I think everything to my upbringing, right? I have an incredible mother. I have an incredible father. I was raised in a house where my father was an elected official for 30 years, almost my entire life. He has been in office for 25, 30 years. And my mother's been also in public service 25, 30 years. And I've seen very successful elected officials around me, right? I've had the benefit of being able to see the careers of a lot of very successful politicians skyrise before me, and I saw what they did and they put in behind the scenes that nobody else saw, what took them to those positions. And there was a lot of commonalities in every single person that I've met. And those commonalities also reflect upon private individuals that I've had the pleasure of knowing. And it's the same thing. It's make sure you make decisions with a good heart, right? Every time you make a dollar, make sure you understand that there are people that don't know how to do that. So try and give back as much as you can. It could be through knowledge. It could be through money. It could be through donations. But make sure every time that you grow, you try and help someone else grow in any capacity, right? And there's different types of growth. There's spiritual, there's economic. I think that people go through many different types of obstacles. There are people that are very fortunate in business and have a very good business mind. I think those people should be giving back financially to the community. I think they're very good. There's a lot of people that have good hearts, and we're blessed with that, and just don't have like a bad bone in their body. They don't want to do mal. And I think those are the people that need to give back to the community and help and make sure that they're constantly, you know, helping the poor and helping people that need, because you don't know what people are going through mentally. But the reason why I say that is because I've seen success throughout different types of industries. And the most important thing is making sure that where you live, the people around you, they know that you care. And that's really where it stems from, caring. I would go to these annual toy drives my mom would do at a young age, and I would see how happy a little kid was, a 7-year-old boy would get because you gave them a little fire truck, and they would cry from happiness. And I looked at it, my mom, I said, why is this little boy, I was a young kid too, I was around like 10 or 12 years old. Why is this kid crying for my fire truck? I have a Nintendo 64, I have a GameCube, I have all these different things. If you give me a fire truck, I would have not cared. And my mom really opened my eyes in through that foundation about how many people and how many children are going through such difficult times, that just the smallest little sign of gratitude, the smallest little sign of kindness can go an extremely long way. And I didn't really believe it until I saw lines of kids. We used to do it at Hialeah Racetrack. Lines of families waiting just to get one free toy for Christmas because they could not afford to buy a $20 or a $50 toy for Christmas that year for their kids. And that was so eye-opening and heartbreaking for me that I just said, Mom, I want to be involved in this. I want to help every single year as many little kids as I possibly can. We partnered with His House Foundation, which is it's an orphanage and children that were abused and obviously have gone through very, very difficult times. And I said, I don't have a lot of money. There's not much I can do, but luckily we know a couple people in the community. Let's try and put together an event every single year just to give back in any shape or way that we possibly can. So that started there. And then that sense of community, that sense of giving back really, really filled my heart, and I wanted to just keep growing that and scaling that. And I saw public office as a way to continue, helping and growing that cause.
Yeah. And first of all, okay, let me thank you for everything that you said. And it's not, to butter each other up or anything, but genuinely, I don't admire a lot of people, and I admire you.
That's very kind.
And I'm so thankful for you, for the friendship we've developed over the years, for everything, right? Because you helped me move up, and you didn't need to help me. I was your employee. You didn't need to do that. You could have just kept me there, and I'm so cognizant of that, and I'm so thankful for everything, and I'm very thankful to have you on, because I think that your story and everything that you have to share can inspire others. And it's even emblematic it shows in your response, right? Giving back in that way. And I share the sentiment of, if you're in a position to give back, to do good in any way, whether it's an idea, money, your hard work, however it may be, that you should do so, and get out into the community that way. And it showed also in your work as a councilman, and you briefly mentioned it there at the end, some of the things you were doing, and that's why you got into that public service life. And I want to pivot a little bit to some of the initiatives that you did as councilman. I mean, one of the biggest things that you did work on while you were on the Hialeah Council was creating a 24/7 entertainment district in the city of Hialeah, which is something that totally leveled up the city, brought a lot of youth to it. I mean, now Hialeah has all types of events. Factory Town is super, super popular, but yet we're still seeing the residents of the city are looking for more. And Hialeah recently just had a major election. So what do you think, as someone who's been both inside the city of Hialeah and out, that Hialeah needs right now in order to take it to the next level?
So I grew up in Hialeah, right? I didn't move out of the city until my dad became mayor. The moment my dad became mayor, I moved out of the city, and I kind of turned my past, kind of turned that chapter of my life into, okay, well, now this is your responsibility. I never wanted, and a lot of people would tell me, you don't need to resign. He's your stepfather. You don't need to resign. You can still, share the city council with him. I just didn't think that was the right thing to do, truthfully. I wanted him to have the opportunity to lead and to govern, and I thought he did an incredible job. I really do think that he escalated and elevated that city to a level where it hasn't been in a very long time. So I'm very proud of the work that he's done. When I ran for city council, I ran on 3 big important issues, but the main 2 where I grew up in that city, and I never had an opportunity to go out anywhere in Hialeah. I used to always have to leave. Actually, I went to Columbus, so all of my friends would never come to Hialeah for any reason. There was no reason for them to go to Hialeah. So if I wanted to hang out with my friends, I would have to drive to the beach, or I'd have to drive to downtown, or I'd have to, obviously go to my friend's house here in wherever, in South Miami, Pinecrest, any of these areas, to hang out with them. So I was constantly always leaving out of Hialeah. I was never hanging out in Hialeah. Sometimes you would go to Main Street and you'd hang out in Miami Lakes, but as you got older, you wanted to go out. There was no possible venues. They had, I don't know if you remember this, but they had Rendezvous one time in Miami Lakes, which was a nightclub that got shut down also. But Hialeah's never had any entertainment, never. And not, at least not for my generation. I know they had Casanovas back in the day, but my generation never had it. And I said, man, why not? There's a ton of kids here. But first of all, our workforce alone, police officers, firefighters, a ton of different working members in our community would love to have the opportunity to go out and have fun and spend their money in Hialeah. There's just no venue to do that. restaurants included, by the way. And I said, we need to create an opportunity to really focus on that youth. My sister at the time would have never in a million years been seen going out in Hialeah. Now her and all her friends, whenever there's a Factory Town event, all of her friends are coming to Hialeah. They're hanging out at her house and my parents' house. They're all getting ready and then going to Factory Town from my parents' house. So it has completely changed. I don't want to take the credit for it. I actually want to give credit to Average Jane and David Sinopoli and Coloma. Those are the three geniuses and inspirations behind Factory Town. Average Jane was a developer, had the vision of seeing the property, purchasing the property when nobody else believed in that. And she took that property to a lot of different developers and a lot of different investors in South Florida, some of the most biggest developers in South Florida, and nobody shared the vision that she had. She's the only person, and I applaud her so much. And not only that, I admire her for the courage and for the tenacity and work ethic that she put to creating what it is today. David Sinopoli and Coloma are the geniuses behind the actual creative of the event. That event would not exist if it wasn't for those two people. They're the people that own Space Nightclub and they own 3 Points Music Festival. They saw Factory Town and they were enamored with the possibilities that existed. Factory Town was an old mattress factory. That's what it was. It was an abandoned mattress factory. It was, when I first saw it, I said, are you guys sure you're taking me to the right place? This is supposed to be the future of entertainment. And it's, you know, the first events that occurred, Elon Musk was there. Kanye West was there. They've had days where over 12,000 people every single day, over close to 40,000 people in a weekend. The lines to get in there are insane. Sold out tables, $15,000, $20,000 bottle service. Nobody believes you're in Hialeah when you step foot in Factory Town. And that vision came because I was the vice president of the city council. Average Jane came to meet with me and discuss through a good friend of ours, Felix Losarte, her attorney, which we shared the vision on being able to collaborate and create this 24/7 district. At that time, the mayor, Carlos Hernandez, actually wanted it to be nudity. He wanted to be able to have full nudity district. And that's where, for those of you that know Avra, she kind of said, I think we're gonna go a different way. I don't think that's gonna be the route that we pursue. And I'm so glad that she did, because that has become a world-class event and venue. And I got very lucky that I met my wife because of Factory Town. My wife was the architect that actually designed Factory Town. Yeah. So my wife works with Average Jane, and my wife had put the plans together, and I met with them. And at that time, when I saw the plans, I said, this is incredible, but your architect is beautiful. That was really, so I was at the same time trying to advance this idea. I said, this might be a 2-for-1 situation. There's a beautiful architect that I get to meet with all the time, and they're bringing a world-class venue here to Hialeah. I will do whatever it takes to make this successful. So I was actually the city councilman that brought forth the ordinance of Factory Town. I was the sponsor. We passed it 7-0. It passed unanimously. And, you know, it's been a hit and it's been a success since day one. And it's because of the amazing people. That goes to show you how important collaborations are. We had somebody in the city. I had myself, obviously the vice president of city council, that was bringing forth this ordinance. I was able to get the right support on the city council, and I had support of the mayor to make sure we had this approval. You had a developer that was willing to put the financial capital at risk and have the vision for what this could be. And obviously the design team, my wife included. And then you had the geniuses behind the creatives and the event, which is Coloma and David Sinopoli, geniuses in this space. So if it wasn't for those three components, Factory Town would not exist. But you needed successful, and you had the right leadership in the city. For taking me aside, I'm just giving you the formula of what was necessary. You needed the right leadership in the city. You needed the right private partner, and then you needed the right creative team, and honestly, they're visionaries. And that together is what created the success of Factory Town. You couldn't have done one without the other. And I'm so glad. That was honestly the most proud I've ever been, sponsoring legislation. And honestly, I consider it a legacy that I was able to just be a part of it. And when I see what it has become today, I think how far Hialeah has come and the potential and possibilities that it has to continue to grow moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, Hialeah now, as it stands, is growing even more and more. You have that new restaurant that it's kind of like a speakeasy, and I think some of that started with Factory Town and some of the amazing work you talked about. More and more things are coming to the city of Hialeah, and I think it's because of what you said, right? There's youth there, there's that push, and there's a need for it. But on top of that, I think people don't realize how much work and partnership goes into these things. Somebody on the outside that doesn't understand might just think, oh yeah, like this rich guy bought the land and he built that and that was it. No, there's the government that has to cooperate. There's the architects. There's so many different people that come along for this ride of creating a better city and investing back into things. And that was another one of your huge platforms back when you were councilman. In fact, you exposed a huge thing having to do with the licenses and businesses in the city of Hialeah, and you helped get money back for local businesses. And now as a business owner yourself, you know, I wonder what do you think is the importance, or how can you articulate the importance of making sure we get things done right for our local businesses?
So that was the second thing that I ran on that was a really big deal at the time that I've never actually publicly spoken about. And again, I think that when you're in an elected office, you don't really want to go around, you know, beating your chest whenever you accomplish something. I think that it's, you know, at the time you should talk about it, but I never really talked about this issue specifically outside of it. When I ran for city council, there was a big issue on the franchise fees. So what happens, long story short, because it's very boring for a lot of people, is whenever you open a business in the city of Miami, and whenever you open a business in Miami-Dade County, depending on what business you are in, you have to have a certificate of occupancy. Okay, and you have to go through a process where DERM, which is the environmental department in Miami-Dade County that oversees water usage and all this stuff and contamination and so on and so forth, DERM has to give you an approval on your certificate of occupancy, making sure the amount of water that you are going to use as this new business does not exceed the prior use, right? So for example, if you're a barbershop and you were using X amount of gallons a day, now the next business might be a bakery and that bakery is gonna be using significantly more water. You're gonna put a lot of pressure on the lines underneath the water and sewer lines. So we wanna make sure that there's sufficient capacity for this new business you're gonna bring forth. If there's gonna exceed, so what ends up happening is, at that time, Hialeah had a moratorium on new businesses in certain locations. Why? Because the pump stations that actually pump the water underground, there's only so much capacity that they might have for new businesses that are going to use more and more water. So you would have to upgrade your pump stations and your mains, and that could cost hundreds of thousands to millions and millions of dollars. So the city at that time wasn't making that investment. So what would happen is new businesses wanted to open in the city. They would go get their DERM license. DERM would say, no, you cannot open that business there. So now that business is stuck with the bill of, well, I took out rent and I paid lease and I've hired employees and I made an investment. What do you mean I can't open? And DERM would say, I'm sorry, unless you make these improvements in this area where you're in, there's a moratorium for new businesses, you cannot open your business. So imagine how frustrated a lot of these business owners were when they would make hundreds of thousands of dollars of investments, plans, architects, design, build outs, and the county is telling them you cannot open. So the mayor at the time said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to issue a temporary license. That temporary license is going to allow for you, business owner, to operate within my city, okay, until you get the final approval from DERM. Great idea. Good idea. It was good motive. The problem is that motive took a wrong turn. And I'm not blaming him. I'm not blaming the administration. I'm just simply saying for whatever reason, that idea took a wrong turn. And what happened was, a lot of people were being charged quarterly for these fees. So an annual fee to DERM could have been $100, $200, a couple $100. This franchise fee was charging 4 times that every quarter. So there were businesses that were paying $2,000 a quarter just to stay open. And then as we started to investigate this, this is what really started to bother me, was you had businesses that said they were paying cash. So there was a lot of cash payments being made, number one. And then number two, there was a lot of businesses that were opening that weren't supposed to be opening, right? Because the county was prohibiting them because of the moratorium. So when I saw this, I said, wait a minute. We've taken in how much money from this franchise program? Over $300,000 to $400,000 we've taken into the city. We didn't have some we didn't have receipts for, which means there was business owners that came in and paid, right? And left and didn't even have a receipt from the city that they made these payments. So I said, no. We need to give the money back to all these residents. And what? Are you crazy? We're not going to give the money back to us. I said, listen to me. We had a decree, we had a consent decree at that time, which was City of Hialeah had an agreement with Miami-Dade County, which Miami-Dade County had an agreement with EPA, which was federal. And basically, the EPA allows Miami-Dade County to oversee and the water and sewer lines and obviously everything that's going on in Hialeah, this decree for new business. So us giving these temporary licenses was circumventing this agreement that we had with Miami-Dade County. Basically, we went off rogue, and we were doing something without their supervision. Said, do you understand that if something happens, we are liable, we can get sued, the city can get sued for what we're doing because we're circumventing the law, and a contract that we have was actually a violation of a contract. We got to end this program right now, and we need to give all the money back. I got into office, and in 3 months, that ordinance was repealed, and we gave back $290,000 to all the residents that ever participated in that program, which means there were, I don't remember how many at the time, maybe over 300 or 250, 300 companies that had registered in the city of Hialeah that had made payments that years later, when I arrived, all of a sudden got a call from the city of Hialeah and said, hey, there's a check waiting for you. What do you mean there's a check waiting for me? Yeah, you made some payments, but we weren't supposed to collect this money, so we're actually giving you a rebate. We're giving you the money back. So there was tons of businesses that were getting checks from the city of Hialeah for thousands of dollars for payments that they made that they weren't supposed to have been making. So I felt really, really proud of that accomplishment. And luckily, we were able to get rid of that program. The city of Hialeah doesn't do that anymore. And here we are today.
Yeah. No, and talk about public service, right? I mean, that was something that lost the city money. They could have kept it. They could have kept it going. They could have kept it hush-hush. Maybe the county would have never found out. Maybe they would have, and it would have become huge litigation. But you stood up for those residents and those business owners, and I think that's a really wonderful thing. And for everybody out there that doesn't deal with business or doesn't manage their own business, Durham is the type of thing that could hold up your business for a year or 2 years. And anyone that's ever even tried to rent out a space and run a simple little business has to deal with Durham and all these licenses. So this is the type of thing that's so crucial to our local economy, because this is the sort of thing that could kill a mom and pop. So
no, I mean, and it does. It's not that it could. I see it all the time. It kills 100%.
Regularly.
All the time.
In fact, in some of our own tenants, in my experience, right, we had a tenant that couldn't open up for a year, waiting for those licenses from the city and the county. They were in the city of Miami, granted, but still, those types of things are end all be all. And now I want to pivot a little bit to the law firm, your legal practice. You guys have several practice areas, but your your bread and butter for the most part are mass torts, personal injury, data privacy, and now immigration. You guys have offices here in Miami and in DC. Why did you guys decide to expand into DC, and why specialize in these areas of law?
So I started my practice when I was a city council member, and it was just me, right? It was just one employee, Oscar de la Rosa. And like I mentioned, when I was in law school, I didn't even want to be a lawyer. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I was in law school. And people always ask me this question, my sister, a lot of our friends, did you know that you wanted to be practicing this space when you went to law school? And I said, no, honestly, I was probably going to become a lawyer, get my degree. I wasn't even sure if I was going to take the bar or not. And then I was going to be involved in real estate. That's what I really wanted to do. That's what when I was young, I was in my early 20s, I would buy properties, I would fix them up, and I would sell them. That's kind of how I was being able to move around in South Florida. And that's actually how I started building a relationship with Francis Suarez. Francis Suarez would do a lot of my title work. His company would do, like, when I would buy these properties, I would fix them up and I would take them to him, and he would do the title work. His company would do the title work for me. And I started, and he helped open a lot of doors for me as well. He's been like a big brother to me since I started in politics. And when I go to law school, I get involved in the city council. I realize that it's very difficult for an elected official as a lawyer to get hired in a big firm in South Florida. A lot of firms don't want to hire elected officials because there's a lot of conflicts that come with that. So I said, look, I'm not going to be begging law firms to hire me. Like I always told you, how can I take this upon myself and I could determine my future, and I can kind of control my life. That's kind of been my whole mantra. How can I be in control of my own life? So I said, I'm just going to open my own law firm. So I passed the bar in October, and November I opened up my law firm. Literally a month after. Everyone said I was crazy. It was just me. I was renting space in my old employer's office. It was a tiny little cubicle. I was actually in his IT, like where he had his IT. I had rented a space there, and I was just working from there. And we've grown from there. 5 years later, we have 38 employees. We're, like I told you, offices in DC and offices in Miami. We went from representing, like 2 clients, and I think our Rolodex now is we represent maybe close to 30,000 clients nationwide. We have over 30,000 claims. And we took that jump because I started doing real estate. I started getting a couple PI cases, started learning that. And a friend of ours that was doing a mass tort, right, saw that I was doing a lot of advertising. Said, man, you're expanding a lot. You're doing a lot of these videos. Why don't you try mass torts? I said, I have no idea what that is. Please elaborate. And he sat down, he explained to me the entire business, how it operates. We started going to conventions. I started seeing how this entire world worked. And it was coincidentally at the same time of Camp Lejeune litigation that was arising. So the first mass tort case that I got involved in was Camp Lejeune, and we got involved with local unions and local organizations. So we started representing a lot of hundreds of veterans that unfortunately suffered from contaminated water in North Carolina when they were serving. And some of them have died, and some of them that are still with us have incredibly horrible diseases like kidney cancer, liver cancer, and probably, unfortunately will be a wrongful death action soon. And when we learned about this space, then we said, well, how else can we help? Who else can we help? There's a lot of people that didn't even know that this compensation was available to them. We got involved in the talcum powder lawsuit. We represent over 300 women that have unfortunately been victims of ovarian cancer due to the use of talcum powder. We represented firefighters and districts of contaminated water through the PFAS litigation. And then we kind of, from there, the mindset has always been, how do we help? How do we continue to help victims? And how do we continue to help people that have been hurting and have been damaged because of the negligence either of a corporation or somebody else, and they're not even at fault. So you live your entire life thinking that talcum powder is safe to use. I'm Cuban, right? My grandmother at a very young age would put talcum powder on everything. I'm pretty sure it was either sazon Goya or talco. Those are the two most common products at my grandmother's house, okay? And sometimes she would put the sazon Goya on the baby by accident, and sometimes she would put the talcum powder on the picadillo by accident. So those are two products that you could not live without at my grandmother's house. And first of all, in a lot of these products, I'm not saying anything about Goya because obviously I love them and I love Sazón, but not them, but other brands specifically have MSG, which is a whole nother thing that we're getting involved into now, which is the food in the United States, how we're being contaminated, and a lot of the things that we see, a lot of the autism, a lot of the cancers, a lot of the health issues that we currently have that we don't have answers for, there is a linkage to the foods that we're consuming, 100%. And we're getting involved in that now too. That's going to take a little bit longer time. But we were able to say, how do we grow? Where are there people that are being hurt? Where are people suffering because of the negligence of a corporation that just doesn't care? All they care about is profit. And that's kind of been the mission statement to find where we continue to go and grow. So the data breach was the same thing. We said if people are being taken advantage of, there's not sufficient data laws that protect your privacy. Consumer products, talcum powder, environmental issues, Camp Lejeune. So the mantra has always been, where can we inject our work ethic, knowledge, and team into getting a recovery for individuals that have been victims? That's kind of always been the mission statement.
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful line to live by as an attorney, especially the work. I mean, I was there for some of the Camp Lejeune and talcum powder work, and the things that you were doing at the firm is the type of thing that could change somebody's life, right? These are people that have suffered terrible diseases, cancers, lymphomas, so many different things, especially the Camp Lejeunes. Our vets, I mean, I can't tell you the things that you and I heard with some of them and what was going on at some of the VA hospitals and just getting documents back, right? And so giving back into the community in that way is incredible. Before we go any further, I do want to say nothing is legal advice. Please consult an attorney. Call the firm. Call Oscar. But nothing that we say on the podcast is legal advice. If you have a situation, please reach out to an attorney and have them tailor advice specifically to you. But having said that, the law has been undergoing some really major changes lately, especially with respect to immigration. What are some of the biggest things that people who have visas, people who have pending residency or citizenship cases, what are some of the biggest things they should be aware of now?
Yeah, so then, we continued the growth of the firm. As you're going to learn this very soon because you're going to be a very successful attorney. You're going to have your own practice. You're going to have tons of employees. You're going to be in every single state. You're going to be massive. So Morgan & Morgan needs to be careful because this will probably be the largest law firm in the country. I say that because as you continue to grow the practice, you start to look for areas of opportunity and where could you make a difference, truthfully. That's really the vision, is where can you make a difference? And when I was in city council and I had the benefit of having, like I mentioned, an incredible mother that has worked in the federal government for a very long time, I would constantly get cases brought to me immigration related, and I would always push them aside, or I would connect them and say, listen, this is the person to speak with, and I kind of would just hand them off. And it wasn't until last year, before the election, that I realized, wow, this is going to be a really big problem. How can we help? Because there's a lot of people that have come to us asking for help, and we always rejected them. And I said, okay, I only take on certain cases. I only take on cases that I think I could win. So if I don't think you have a viable path to fixing your current status or being able to help you, like actually today we called the woman that we were able to get her green card, and a green card just came in the mail. She was crying, overjoying, so full of joy. She wants to send me all her family members. I said, listen, I don't know if I can do what I did for you for everybody. That's why it's a case-by-case basis. But I remember being on the city council, and a friend of mine came and says, listen, my mother's sick. She's in Cuba. She's going to pass away. I haven't seen my mother in over 6 years. I just want to see my mom, God forbid, before anything happens to her. I've submitted 3 different requests, and I can't get her to come to the United States just for a couple months. I just want her to be able to be here, see if maybe we can get some treatment for her. Can you do anything? I'm begging you. We've paid lawyers. We've done all these different things. This is when I wasn't practicing immigration. This is when I was just on the city council. I said, let me see what I can do. I spoke to the right people, and through Senator Rubio's office, which I'm incredibly grateful for, we were able to bring this gentleman's mom from Cuba to the United States for a year. And this was a 48-year-old man at the time. And when I saw him and I gave him the good news, he got on his knees and he started crying. And he couldn't even talk. And he goes, you don't understand how grateful I am for what you just did to me. There's no amount of money that could have given me that satisfaction. So the joy that I got, I didn't charge him $1, right? I just simply wanted to see if I can help, I will. And that reaction of that man, to this day, he called me every single week. He goes, anything you need ever, anything that you ever need, I'm here for you. And I said, thank you so much. I don't need anything from you. But the joy that I was able to bring somebody without me having to do really much work or even charge him, I said, how can I replicate this feeling constantly? Because I think that's what life is about. Life is about being able to make an impact on other people's lives without any personal agenda. Just knowing that you made some other person's life better and you moved on from that. That, I think, is the true purpose of a professional. I think a true purpose of what we should have as leaders in the community and as people that just, want to be a good citizen.
Yeah, and I can't put it any better than you did, right? It just being a good citizen, being that source of light for the community, doing what you can. You even have a case going on right now that really touched my heart when I heard about it, which is, I believe she's 2 years old, and she's in Cuba, and she is in desperate need of cancer treatment. And that's a case that you are doing pro bono. So how did this case reach you guys? I know there might be some limitations as to what you can say, but how did this reach you guys, and what was the importance of doing that case pro bono, and how's it going?
So I think it's really important for people to understand that at least in the legal community, and I'll speak for myself because I can't speak about other attorneys on this opinion, but I think it's really important to always be collaborating with other law firms. I hate when attorneys think that they're the smartest person in the room, right? And they think they know everything. There are some attorneys that are brilliant, right? And obviously I take their hat off to them. There's a gentleman that I will say here that I would probably say is, in my opinion, one of the best attorneys in the country, and he's here in South Florida, Gonzalo Dorda. And I'll give him a little shout out because I started my legal career working for him when I was 17 years old. And I'm not kidding you when I tell you that is what I consider a lawyer's lawyer. If I have problems, I call him. He is brilliant, and I say that because you need to have constant collaborations with other law firms here to work on cases together, combine resources, because if there is a case like that one specifically, the more lawyers involved is better. And one taking credit as opposed to the other is not really beneficial for the cause. So a friend of mine, Robert Dominguez, gave me a call. Robert's a lawyer here in South Florida. We went to school together. And he says, look, I just got this case, and I really think you can be a great asset for us. Immediately got her involved. I got Congresswoman Maria Vida Salazar's office involved. I got Diaz Balart's office involved, doing everything we possibly can. It's a 2-year-old girl that has, unfortunately, horrific cancer. She wasn't able to get the right treatment in Cuba. Actually, when they operated her in Cuba, they weren't able to give her any pain medication after she left the hospital because there wasn't even Tylenol to give the little girl. That's how sad this is. And they weren't able to do the procedure correctly. And they said, you need to get her out of here because now she's going to die. So they took her out from Cuba. She's in Costa Rica now. She's getting further medical treatment in Costa Rica. I can't say names or anything of that nature, but she's in Costa Rica now. And we're trying to get her now to the United States, to Miami. We have a lot of support here in the community, hospitals that are willing to help treat her. So now we're working on getting her a specific visa so she can come get the treatment that she needs here in Miami. And obviously, we're working with all the great leaders. We're doing everything we possibly can. We did file, and we're in this process. I can't talk too much about where we are, but we are working very hard on bringing her, and I think we're going to be able to come through, and she deserves it. And that's a case where I'm glad that I'm able to collaborate with other people to help something like that occur.
Yeah, that's an incredible case to me. I think that shows the almost altruism that can be present in the law and what's going on, because this is a case that you're taking on with zero interest. It's a complicated matter. It's a life and death situation. You don't need to have that on your back, and yet you do. And I think another thing people don't realize, right, like you're working with all these congressional offices and all these different things. Those are resources that are available to you. Secretary Rubio, when he was senator here, did fantastic work. And all of those things just go to show that it's not, he's not a lawyer, he's a liar. No, they're good people. There's great people in the legal profession, and you even once you're quoted as saying on your own website, right? At De La Rosa Law, our forward-thinking approach drives us to push boundaries, challenge conventional norms, and pioneer innovative solutions tailored to your unique needs. So how do you guys continue to bring forward-thinking approaches every day to your cases, even in areas that might seem somewhat rote, like personal injury?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, sometimes there are similar injuries that you can follow a certain playbook, right? And you see that all the time. Law firms make a business out of that, just kind of repetition, plug and play. But in different areas, at least the ones that I'm involved in, they do get complicated, and you need a tailored approach to being able to achieve the goal, whether it's a visa, whether it's compensation from a mass tort case, whether it's a data breach violation, whether it's a car accident, whatever the issue is, you have to make sure you sit down and you say, okay, what angle can we bring separately from the existing already current playbook that we have? So I'll give you an example, and I think I can talk about this because we settled with this case already, so I think I can talk about it. But there was a data breach case that we had. I don't want to talk too much about legal strategies and stuff like that because there's a lot of ongoing cases, but there's a specific case that we just settled. I can say this is not a big deal. So we sued this company called Poker Go, right? And one of the strategies was to have, to put some pressure on them, was to have poker players kind of wearing the shirts or kind of having there was a data breach to bring exposure. So sometimes what you want to be able to do is when you're suing or when you are representing a client, you want to bring as much outside the legal profession, any type of resource that you might have that might be able to help your client. So what we were able to do is a media strategy, that media strategy was able to compel this defendant to come to the table and do a settlement negotiation to avoid any further exposure that they already had. So my point being is, how do you continue to drive creatives and different solutions? Is you got to think outside the box. Sometimes, and that might be thinking outside of just black letter law. Can you get the media involved? What can you do to help drive a narrative that's beneficial to your client? Obviously within the legal realm, everything completely always legal, everything always copacetic. But put pressure and think outside the typical, how every other lawyer would look at a case. And I think that's it. I think we're living in a digital age. I think that social media is the most powerful tool we'll ever have in our lifetime. And when you couple that with AI, and you couple that with other types of resources you have at your availability, AI can help you with your discovery. AI can help you discover. You could be, for example, living in an area where you say, hey, look, an example, in Georgia, there's a lot of people that are getting kidney disease or kidney cancer. Why is that within a zip code, all these people are suffering from that? And there's no reason, there's no correlation. No one can make that correlation. But with the right science and with the right AI, you can actually say, well, wait a minute, there's a water treatment plant, or there's a sewage facility, there's a company that's dumping into the water, and that's what's causing all these cancers. That's thinking outside the box. How do you implement just outside legal strategy, other avenues and other resources that can help strengthen your case?
Yeah, 100%. And I think part of that is what you talked about, right? Embracing these new technologies, AI. I mean, even it's to the point where AI has such a foothold in what we're doing nowadays that even databases like Lexis and Westlaw, which for those who don't know, Lexis and Westlaw, as an attorney, even as a law student, you use it to find cases, do research, and they have AI built into it now. And that's what we're getting at. You need to embrace that sort of thing to be creative and be able to stand by your clients so diligently. And keeping that in mind, talking about the future and all this technology that you're embracing, our last question today, what is your vision for the future of De La Rosa Law, and how do you plan to continue revolutionizing the practice and service of law?
I think that AI is going to play a massive role, not just in the legal field, but in most professional fields. I do believe that there's going to be nonstop opportunities for people to have compensation available for damages that they didn't even know existed. So a lot of people might say, hey, I've always had this skin rash. I've always had acne. I've always had this problem with a heart murmur. I've always had these problems with my liver. And AI is going to help identify correlations that other similar people like you are going to say, well, that's probably because of X, Y, and Z. That would have never even known about that. So you're going to be able to see a lot more opportunities, a lot more science pointing towards the causation of what's occurring in a lot of these people that just think they live regular lives and they were just born with these problems. And there's actually a correlation of something that was going on because of a negligent actor. I think you're going to see a massive growth in that, number one. I think number two, I think you're going to have individuals, being able to do a lot of some of the work themselves. I think people are getting much more intelligent. I think the resources allow them to say, well, why am I going to hire an attorney to review this contract when I have AI that can probably review this contract? Now, I can't give legal advice. I understand that, but I think you're going to start seeing a lot of that occurring. For me specifically, look, I love right now, I don't know what happens in the future, but I like helping. I like giving back, whether it's getting somebody their visa, whether it's giving somebody a check for the damages that they're owed. Helping somebody's life in any capacity is very fulfilling for me personally. So I would like to scale that business, not so much the business of law. How do I continue to scale the business of helping others? And that's really where my head's at right now.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're going to keep doing that for years and years to come. As you grow, you're just going to get even stronger doing it. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Oscar. And thank you so much. Thank everyone for watching.
Thank you all so much. Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing. And this is our future U.S. Senator here in the next 6 to 8 years. I'm calling it right now. I will be your first check. The moment that you decide to run for anything, you call me first. I want to say it here. For whatever she decides to run for, I am